This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, to check you have the tickets in your wallet first before you drive 2 hours to the big game. Seriously, you had one job. Now the closest you'll get to the 50-yard line is parking lot D. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Mixed Doubles podcast. We're your hosts, Maggie Robinson
and Josh Smythe McCauley.
We're former D1 athletes and co-workers at a major professional sports league with a passion for all things women's sports. If you're interested in more content, please follow us on Instagram at Mixed Doubles Pod. That's 1D, the Mix and the Double, share it. And as always, Josh, take it away.
All opinions stated here are our own and have absolutely no affiliation with our employer whatsoever.
And this week, we are so excited to bring you another edition of our interview series. And today we are talking to the amazing Emily Proud, who is an anchor and host at CBS Sports HQ, CBS Sports College Football, and 24/7 Sports. But most excitingly, today we're talking about her work as a sideline reporter for the WNBA. Thank you for coming on, Emily. We are so excited to have you.
Of course. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for the invite.
This will be a really fun conversation. So I guess just to kick it off, you're doing something that so many people aspire to do. This is like dream job for a lot of people, and honestly, myself included.
I was going to say, right?
Love if you could share your journey post-college to ending up at one of the biggest sports networks.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, coming out of school, just wanted to be a local news sports anchor in my hometown. That was my biggest goal that I could possibly dream. And that was the first job that I got out of college. So I actually had a conversation with a professor, I think that somebody on this podcast knows pretty well, who continued to tell me, like, shoot for the stars. Like, you can do better than Knoxville, Tennessee. You can continue to dream. And I was like, no, girl, like, I got my dream job. I'm good. I'm going to work here forever. And so straight out of school, I went to Knoxville. And when I say that that was my dream job, it was the coolest thing to be able to cover the teams that I grew up watching, and then also to reconnect with the community that I grew up in. I would have a second grade teacher message me and say, "Hey, I saw you on the news." Like, that was just the coolest experience ever. I did that for 2 years. And then while I was in school in Nashville, I interned at a station in Nashville, and there was a job opening there. And so I ended up going to Nashville. So that was my one step up. And then I worked there for 4 years. And this job that I'm in now just kind of, it came about randomly, and I didn't really know what it was. But, I was going through kind of a time of transition after the pandemic, and I actually had accepted a different job at the news station that I was working at. I was doing sports and news. And I don't know if you could tell, but like the last couple of years, our country and world is like going up in flames. And so giving that news every day was not fun. And I'm like so passionate about sports. And so when I really got away from sports, that's when I was like, no, need to go back, need to stay in my lane, get back in my lane. And so that's when this job came about, and it was all sports all the time. And it was actually working more with a company called 24/7 Sports that was under the CBS Sports umbrella. And I was like, I know who you guys are. I don't know what this job is. They said it was mainly stuff for YouTube, but that there was opportunities with CBS Sports. And so I took it and never looked back. And I think what's so great about this company is they do a good job of allowing you to try a lot of different things. And if you prove yourself, they'll give you something else. They'll give you something else. And so it was just the perfect place for being in an environment where I was around sports all the time.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, one, I do think it's crazy that first job out of college, you literally landed your dream job. That's incredible.
I didn't dream enough, but at the time, but no, I was very, very lucky. My career trajectory has been incredibly, I would say, like, small in terms of when I got into local news. They always tell you, like, get ready, pack your bags, you're gonna go move to Wyoming, or you're gonna go live in the middle of nowhere. And I've only lived on half of the state of Tennessee my entire life, because my career has just taken me from Knoxville to Nashville pretty much. So I've been very lucky in that regard. It's not always the case. So I do consider myself extremely lucky for how things have turned out so far.
And you mentioned 24/7. Where is that based? If you're still based in Nashville, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's based in Nashville. So
oh my gosh, I had no idea.
Super easy. Yeah, so that's what I mean. I'm like, aren't I going to go somewhere at some point in my life? Don't I need to see the world? But no, I love Nashville. I have family here. My husband and I had just bought a house a year before my contract was up in local news. So we got to stay here and live here, and it really worked out for sure.
And I know while you're based in Nashville, you're traveling all the time for all these different assignments.
Mm-hmm.
How do you maintain like a semblance of normalcy? Like you said, you're going to San Diego tomorrow. How do you kind of keep routine for a job that's super not routine?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is just adjusting your schedule to work, which I know like that sounds counterintuitive. A lot of people are like, no, you need to focus on home life. But if you resist it, if you continually are like, no, I need to like just totally focus on this and, work be damned, I can worry about this later. Like, then you're just going to drive yourself absolutely nuts. And so I learned how to kind of fit this square peg into a round hole when I was working in local news, because my off days were always Wednesday, Thursday, which meant that I was working weekends, I was working nights. And so anytime that I would just like get upset about the fact that, okay, my husband and I can't go on a date on a Saturday night, this stinks. If I continually got upset about that, then that would not be a fun life to live. Instead, what we did, we learned that, there's a lot of good happy hours during the week. It's a lot easier to get a reservation on a Wednesday or on a Thursday than it is on a Saturday. So, you make it work and you adjust around things. I am very, very type A. I have a very organized and color-coded calendar. So a lot of it is staying organized and continually making sure that you're building time for the things that are important and also, the things that you have to do. And so I know it's kind of cheesy to do the color coding, but honestly, like I will like yellow is my favorite color. And that's the color that I've chosen for personal things. And so if I look at my week and I'm like, there's no yellow on here, I need to fix that. I need to like schedule time to have dinner with a friend, or I need to, schedule a time to hang out with my husband or stuff like that. And while that sounds like very regimented and hardcore, during football season, it's kind of what you have to do. And as a visual person, if I say blue, because CBS is blue, that's work. If there's all blue on there, then I'm like, all right, I need some balance in my life. So it works for me. So I guess I'll continue to do that. But I don't know if that's good advice or bad advice for people that are trying to schedule their lives like that. But it's something that has really worked for me to be able to visually look at my life as opposed to having to continually take stock and be like, have I seen this friend in a while? No, I haven't. Should I reach it? Like that would drive me nuts, where I'm just looking at it. I'm like, you know what? I've had a lot of work this week. Let's try to make some time for myself for friendships and that sort of thing. And it just, I think it's worked out that way. I did not start that way. I will tell you very much that this was something that is built years over years. So if you're in a place right now where you're like, I have no balance whatsoever, I was there. You just got to continually work on it and figure out what works for you.
Yeah, that sounds so healthy. And I will say, given this is like my second football season, it's crazy.
Yeah.
You think about working in sports, you're like, oh, it's the occasional few. No, there's a lot of games. The games don't stop ever. It doesn't matter if you want to like watch football or not.
On weekends, on holidays. Yep. The news also doesn't fit into this perfect 9 to 5 calendar. So you're kind of always on. So yeah. And in the beginning, it was overwhelming and I did not handle it well and I did not organize it well. And then I just have kind of had to figure it out. And so that's really what's worked for me.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if we learn anything today, I'm sure we'll learn a lot. But if I'm taking away anything, it's that I need to start color coding my calendar.
It works.
And I think that's perfect, right? Like if it's orange and I haven't seen my friend in forever and I'm just like, there's not enough orange on my calendar, that's genius. I'm over here like, how have I not thought about it?
No, at the very least, if it doesn't work, you feel better about it, right? Like I feel like I have my life together because it's in a calendar. Like I might be going crazy and I might have mountains of laundry, but that's not on my calendar. My calendar is clean and it's nice and it makes me seem like I got it together. But no, I'm one of those people too. I make lists. Even if I've already done something, I need to write it down so I can cross it off so I can feel myself. Yeah.
I might have done that at work today. Yeah.
Oh, every day. It's the little things. It's the, I did that today. At the very least.
I'm back.
Yep, exactly. You can never get enough pat on the backs at work. But I did want to transition to the WNBA. I think you're talking to two huge WNBA fans, and we're obviously coming off of what was an incredible final series between the Lynx and the Liberty, who, I won't speak for Maggie. She's come to a game with myself, but I'm a huge Liberty fan, so I'm very happy right now. It was such an exciting thing to watch. But we know this was your first season covering the WNBA. So really just wanted to hear from you what that experience was like covering this league at such a high point as far as the media coverage, the national attention that it was getting. Just take us through what that experience was like for you this season.
Yeah, I mean, first off, it was such a gift to get that assignment. That was one of those that just totally came out of the blue. And I was like, hell yeah, jumping 2 feet in. Never covered it before, to be honest. Didn't watch a ton of the WNBA before this. I'm really big on college sports. So I had watched a lot of the players in college and obviously had seen UConn's dominance. And as a Lady Vols fan, it's hard not to love women's basketball. And so that was the extent of my knowledge. And so for my perspective, preparing for it, like I had to do a lot more research on the league and the dynamics and the history and all of that maybe than I would do for other sports that I've prepared for. And I loved that. It was so cool, learning about all these different dynamics, the drama. There's so much drama in the WNBA too. Like there's just all these kind of behind the scenes storylines and everything. And so learning so much about it was such a gift. But being in it while the growth was happening, the coolest part was that, as part of the broadcast team, you get to have these meetings with coaches and players, and you get to go to practice, and you get to kind of see the people that are involved in it in a little bit more of a casual setting. And so just the conversations that we would have in between interviews and stuff, like you could sense the excitement and the feeling of like a little bit being overwhelmed from some of these players. I mean, we were there, my first game was in May, and it was a few weeks into the season, and they just found out a few days before that they were getting charter flights. And as we know, that rollout was very messy and it wasn't perfect when it started, but the teams that we had been talking to had each gotten charter flights. It was a Dallas against Connecticut game, and they were all talking about like, they were so thankful. They were like, this is amazing. We have so much more time. We can leave when we are ready to leave. We don't have to try to get a flight. We don't have to worry about being delayed. We don't have to worry about, trying to make sure that everybody's in the same place at one time. Like they were all just gushing about the flexibility. And so it was cool to be in the league while these things were changing and while it was growing. And the game was in Dallas, and Dallas actually hosted the Fever and Caitlin Clark for their first regular season game. And so talking to their social media person and talking to the person that was in charge of their media relations, she was like, it was insane. You're getting calls from like Good Morning America if they can have a set inside our arena. And so it's not just the fact that all of us fans have been able to see this growth, but seeing the people that are involved in it and who have been involved in it for like decades and knew what it was like before, go through this change and get to have their lives and their worlds change. I mean, talking to some of these media relations people, they were like, we got a couple requests here and there. I was like pretty quiet. We just had our typical media members. We were just doing our thing. And then to jump right into like the Caitlin Clark exposure and explosion and all of that, like it was just cool to see their reaction to this dramatic shift in the league, but also their lives in particular.
Yeah, you mentioned being there before they announced, the chartered flights, which was such an important thing that happened this season. And there were so many other milestones that happened throughout this WNBA season. From your perspective, were there any storylines throughout this season that really caught your attention? Anything in particular, or anything that you just consider a highlight to you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that honestly, every single game that I did and every story that I prepared for, I was so excited about because I took everything with so much care and I wanted to make sure that I was doing it justice. And I felt like I had this very, very important job to be part of the solution. And I know that there was a lot of issues throughout the year of the coverage of the WNBA and people that clearly were just not ready to talk about women's sports. And so I was so cognizant of like, I want to do it right. I want to do this correctly. But when it comes to just one story in particular, I don't even know if this is a story, but just like a human, Alyssa Thomas, who plays for the Sun, is like the badass of all badasses. So first off, she is the oldest first-time Olympian. And so talking to her after she found out that she made the Olympic squad was just the coolest moment because She was ecstatic. This was something that she'd been working towards so long. It wasn't like some of these players who had constantly been in the Olympic system. You guys know how it works. You got to go to the camps and you got to know the coaches and all of these things. Like, this was something that she was over 30. And so she had been working and working and working. And just as a woman, I love the fact that, you know, it's one thing as an athlete, like, never give up, right? But the amount of things that she has gone through in her career to get her to this point was absolutely insane. And the backdrop of this is, like, I don't know if you guys know this, but she's torn her rotator cuffs in both of her shoulders.
What?
So she has had to adjust her free throw motion because she can't lift her arms. But because she didn't want to stop playing to get surgery for all of it, she just has figured out how to adjust the way that she plays. And the reason that not a lot of people know that is because she plays insanely well. And it's not like this drastic difference where anybody else would be like, no, I'm going to like put life on hold for 2 years while I go figure out this shoulder situation. Because, you know, I didn't play basketball, but I can assume that shoulders are a very important part of the game. So the fact that she's able to continue to do that, like, just in talking to her, she's just so humble and so sweet and quiet. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, watching her play, she is the opposite of humble and sweet and quiet. And so she was just one of the stories in general that I was so drawn to. And I mentioned, like, the fun behind the scenes stuff that goes on with the WNBA. She's, of course, engaged to her teammate, Duana Bonner. And so I just loved, like, their relationship was so great. Like, Duana went to Paris to support her, and she has kids of her own. And so Alyssa Thomas is coming in as kind of like a step parent. And it was just, her in general she was just like my first introduction to, like, these ladies are legit, and they are battling through not just the misogyny and the, like, racism and all the other things that they have to deal with, but they're like legitimate athletes who are also dealing with challenges on the court and in their sport and everything, and just doing it so gracefully and so beautifully. And so she was just one of those people I was just in awe of when I got to speak with her and tell her story.
How did you find out all these things? Did you know about her rotator cuff before, like, chatting with her, or was that something she just?
No, I mean, it's, you know, the internet. It's very helpful. I do a ton of research. I try to listen to podcasts. I try to, you know, just fully immerse myself. And sometimes you hear these little stories and you're like, nah, like, that can't be true. And then you confirm it and you're like, this is absolutely insane. But you will notice it now when you see her shoot free throws. She just doesn't lift her shoulders all the way. She kind of, like, does a little shorter release, or she pops a little bit more. But it, again, like, my shoulders are broken. I'm not going to fix them. I'm just going to fix my shot so I can keep playing. Like,
And go to the Olympics.
She's insane. Yeah.
Yeah, every time we end up talking about these players and these athletes, I'm more and more just like, I could have been so much better in college.
Right?
Funny enough, I tore both of my shoulder labrums playing football, but I was done. There was no
You're like,
me.
this is it. It's the wrap.
There was no changing any motion. I was like, oh, well, that's it for me. But Alyssa is amazing, and she was so fun to watch this season. And that's so cool that you have these opportunities to be so close to the players and not only get to hear these stories, but then actually get to understand the person behind them. So just another follow-up with that, you know, incredible story about Alyssa Thomas. But are there any others as individuals that have stood out to you, just having the opportunity to interview them and get to know them a little bit as humans, as people?
Yeah, I mean, I went into this just so intimidated by everybody. Like, I was just, because I was in awe, and I had been, you know, you also, when you're researching and you're getting ready for stuff, you start to, like, get really excited about the prospect of telling these stories, and you get really excited about the athlete because you're like, I know your story and your story is awesome. And, like, so then you start to, I mean, even I do this with, like, the college kids that I do when I do, like, college football games, and a lot of the college football games that I do are Mountain West. And so they're not necessarily these power conference players that are making the millions of dollars, but I still get intimidated by them because I just get so impressed when I learn about what they're doing. So obviously I was in awe of a lot of these women that I got to cover. And some of them, like, I would be intimidated, and then I would talk to them and I'd be like, oh, you're a human being and you're really chill. And then some of them I would be really intimidated and then talk to them and still be really intimidated. That would definitely be Asia Wilson. Like, I was going into the conversation, and then coming out of it, I was like, I'm not cool enough to be in this space right now. Like, you are incredible. But somebody that was like a total 180 on me that I was really surprised by was Angel Reese. I was very intimidated talking to her, her
Yeah.
social media
Yeah.
presence, the feuds, all this stuff. And she was just one of the like nicest and most gracious people that I have talked to. And she was also one of those people too, where like Alyssa Thomas is very quiet and to herself, but Angel wasn't like this big, I own the room kind of personality. She was just like, yeah, let's talk. Like she was just very chill and relaxed. She was so supportive of other people in the league. Like she would always like turn the conversation on other people. And I was like, this is very different from like the social media presence of like, I take no shit, like, don't,
Yeah.
like move out of my way. So that was what was really interesting to talk to her too, and just know that like, I see why so many people come to her defense in these certain things that, as we know, get very overblown in the media. And a lot of people support her and are still like, she has a great relationship with Caitlin Clark, no matter what people will tell you. But it's because she is such a great human. Like she's just fantastic. The things that she's doing, like we're talking to her, she was getting like a not just a shoe deal, but it was like a whole deal with like a whole clothing line and everything. And she was just like, this was such a cool thing. Like, I have a good relationship with Shaq because of LSU. And she was just like speaking about it so like it was so casually, not like it's gonna be the best line ever and like I'm gonna have the best clothes and everybody's gonna want to wear my, it was just so like gracious. And this, her talking about the year in general and how much she loved her coach and how much she loved her teammates and all of that. And so that was one of those where I was like, I was so scared to talk to you and I like wanted to make sure that I had the perfect questions because I don't want you to like jump down my throat if I said something slightly wrong. No, she's just like the sweetest thing. And we asked her a million questions too. I mean, there's so many people that you could talk to and they'd be like, all right, I'm done. Let's go. But she was like, no, I'll sit here as long. I know I have a game in like half an hour, but sure, let's just chat. Like, let's hang out, So that was somebody I really enjoyed talking to.
That's
love
so cool.
Yeah.
Like truly.
No, she was great. I know. I feel like I'm name dropping all these people, but the league is so small that like all 150 are like name drops.
Yeah.
We were talking about that in one of our previous episodes. We were just kind of like recapping the WNBA and how hard it is to make a team. Everyone on those rosters is insane, like top of their class because there's so few spots. So like, yeah, everyone you're going to talk to is just like a baller.
Like elite.
Right. Yeah. When you go into all of these interviews, I know it kind of depends on the player. Do you prep differently based on if it's the WNBA or if it's a college football game, like a Mountain West player versus Angel Reese versus Asia Wilson? Are you looking at that at a different angle or do you have like a certain steps you go through to prep?
I would say like overall prep wise, it's so different depending on the sport. Like with basketball in particular, we were just talking about it. There's not as many players. And so I feel like I can really get a good grasp of everybody on the team and all the storylines. And I feel like I know it a lot better. So that definitely changes the way that you ask questions and you interact because you feel so knowledgeable about everything when it comes to these teams. When it comes to college football, you're really looking at kind of treetops stuff. And so like the bigger storylines, the bigger players, the ones that are going to make an impact in the game, like as much as I would love to talk about the third string long snapper, like there's just not, it's a waste of my time because I got to, learn 200 players. And so I definitely think the prep work is different. But like I said, like I'm going to be totally honest with you guys. And I hate to, make it seem like one is more important than the other. But when I got this W assignment, I was like, I got to do this thing right. I studied way harder than I had for any other assignment. I really just wanted to do it justice, to be a part of, again, the solution and the growth and the excitement. And so I do feel like I put a lot of care into making sure that it was done correctly. And that's not to say that I don't put it into other things that I do. It's just there's so much coverage of college football and, as you guys know, the NFL. And so you can kind of get buried in all of that. And I've learned just like with women's sports in general, like you have to get it right because you're not just broadcasting the game and then somebody else is going to broadcast it. Like there's so few opportunities to tell the best stories and to tell the right stories. And again, be a part of the growth because again, not a lot of people were great when it came to that moment. And so I just felt like, oh my gosh, like this is big. Like I know that, probably viewership wise, it's very similar. So it wasn't like, well, I'm going to be on a bigger stage. It was more so just like, this is very like, you got to meet the moment. And so definitely the prep work for the WNBA assignment was just a lot more extensive when it came to like being right with like language that I used, making sure that I knew like backstories with players. And so I didn't ask anything like insensitive, and making sure that the harder parts of the conversation were part of the conversation. So it wasn't like, a lot of it was basketball and I wanted to focus on basketball, but like if there was something that they felt passionate about, and like sometimes that would happen, is you would literally ask a basketball question and they would just go off on this tangent and you could tell they're passionate about something. And so leaning into those passions and understanding that it's not just about basketball, especially when it came to this year. And so allowing a little bit more space for that. Like I fully do not anticipate having a conversation about race with the players that I'm going to speak to for my Washington State, San Diego State game this weekend. Like I know that that's not, we're just going to, maybe the most controversial thing we'll talk about is like NIL and transfer portal, but that's nothing compared to just the like awakening that the WNBA was going through this summer. And so that was definitely like a trickier assignment from that regard. So the prep work is definitely different for all of them, but I try to do everything I do with care. But that's just to say that especially with this W assignment, you just had to be very, very cognizant of all the things involved.
Yeah. I mean, it has been such a historic season. And I also think you come at this from like a former student athlete perspective. So I think you have an even deeper understanding of what it feels like to be on the receiving end, I think, of those questions, and like wanting to be treated as a person before a player by reporters. I think a lot of times, you were even alluding to this with the Angel Reese story, of the media kind of spins her as still looking one way, when in reality she sounds like a very humble, down to earth like player. Do you think your background kind of influences the way you approach these, especially with this W assignment?
100%. Yeah. I mean, they always say like, start with a human, not the headline, and that sort of thing. But I think it's definitely my background, and that like I tend to be a lot like gentler with especially college athletes, because I know if like they're in a bad mood, or if they're sassy, or if they're not wanting to talk to me, like it's nothing personal. Maybe they had weights at 6 a.m. or maybe they didn't have time for their nap because they had to work on a paper or something. So because I'd been through it, I definitely take it with more care. But I also think too, like, not to say that women are like soft necessarily, but I do feel like I'm just a lot more understanding as a journalist compared to a lot of like male counterparts. And I do tend to have a little bit more of like a soft spot for the person and not the player. And like genuinely, as a journalist, like I'm way more interested in the person and not the player. Like athletes have the coolest stories. You see them attack all these challenging things on the court or on the ice or on the field. And like chances are, if they deal with something in their personal life that's just as challenging, they attack it the same amount. And so I do find a lot of that stuff like a lot more interesting. And so that it does help me kind of change the way that I view things, and the way that I attack things is more on the human side of things.
No, that's honestly so special, especially just, I know we're all former athletes in this conversation. And so just getting to hear, you see a lot of people talk about the media and the impact that they have on them, whether positive or negative. And those journalists that actually talk to you and look at you and bring a level of care and attention, and just an understanding of you as a person, like that goes so long with how you reciprocate with them, and how you feel going to the podium the next time, if you're, in a position to do that.
Yeah, and it behooves you too, as the reporter and as the person asking questions, to have good relationships with the people that you're talking to.
Yeah.
Who would like rather answer a question from me, who's coming at it and from a human element and not trying to attack you, versus this curmudgeon that's been, trying to get the story and trying to get the headline and all of that. Like I would much rather talk to me in that instance. So it helps everybody involved.
No, absolutely. I want to talk, transitioning away now from the WNBA. You mentioned it briefly earlier, and then just now that you're going to be covering a college football game this weekend. But your main job, I won't say main job, but one of your many jobs right now is as the host of 24/7 Sports with CBS. And so want to just understand, I know what that is because I played high school football and college football. But for our listeners, can you talk about what that is, what you do with them? Just would be really interesting to hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, 24/7 Sports is, in my opinion, unbiased, totally. Like we are the leader when it comes to recruiting news and information, but also recruiting rankings, which I know get controversial all the time. We're the people that hand out the 4 stars and the 5 stars. By we, I mean 24/7 Sports, not me. I'm not a part of our scouting team, because it's also one of those things that we take integrity very, very seriously. So, there's people that accuse you of like the Bama bump, which is when a player commits to Alabama and he's a 3-star, and then we bump him up to a 5-star because he must be great because of Alabama. And we're trying to get, first off, all that stuff is just crazy. Like none of our scouting team members have enough time to like have any bias. They are going through tape. They're essentially like NFL scouts in the way that they are grinding tape, except they're doing it with much crappier resources. Like you say, I mean, I'm sure you look at your old high school tape and you're like, was the person awake when they were filming this? Like, were they on Mars when they were shooting the
grainiest video with a circle
Right?
around you?
Yeah, exactly. Like we love Huddle, and Huddle is fantastic resource for getting video, but is not winning Emmys. And so they have to deal with like much tougher conditions, and they're doing the exact same thing though as NFL evaluators. So something that maybe a big misconception is we have 32 5 stars each cycle because it's based on the first round of the NFL draft. So the scouting team is not projecting towards college necessarily. They're projecting towards the NFL draft. That is their North Star. So if you're a 4-star, that means that you're like a day 2, 3, 4, 5 pick. And then some high 3 stars are kind of those later rounds or the undrafted free agents. So everything is projecting towards the NFL. And to give us a pat on the back, for the 6th straight year, we were the most accurate site in terms of projecting. And what that means is you still end up getting like maybe 30% of the first round correct, which again is insane. Looking at 17-year-olds and saying you're going to be a first round draft pick, like that's still incredibly impressive. But you guys know, like working in the NFL evaluators who have all of this great tape from college and get to interview and do background checks and all of these crazy things still get it wrong most of the time. So that's what we're trying to do, but at a much earlier stage. And so that's essentially what 24/7 Sports is known for. We also have a bunch of college football national writers who cover the sport nationally and do it in a great way. And what was really cool is this past spring, we like fully merged with CBS Sports in terms of our national college football coverage. So our national writers write for both 24/7 Sports, and it also gets like simulcast. I'm sure there's a better word for that, but I'm thinking TV on the CBS Sports .com website too. And so we just have this great network of national reporters. But honestly, so I'm finishing with this because I think what makes 24/7 just the coolest place is that we have all of these individual team sites. So we have GoVols 24/7 that covers Tennessee. We have Gig'em 24/7 that covers Texas A&M. We have Go 24/7, which it's GEAUX, and that covers LSU. And so we have it all across the country. And, it's like if the NFL Network, they have reporters that they send out, but it's like if they had one reporter for every single team on the ground coverage daily, going to press conferences, going to practices, reading the message boards, all of these things. We have that for like every major college team, which no other network can say that. CBS Sports can't say that, but because they own 24/7, they can. ESPN can't say that. Like it's so impressive that like I can, if I have a game like I do this weekend coming up with Washington State, we have a Washington State site. I can reach out to our guy and be like, hey, can you help me? Like, what's going on? Like, what are some of the big storylines? What do I need to know? Like, with all the major teams, we have that. And the other reason that that's incredibly important is, I don't know if you guys are like big college sports fans, but as a diehard Tennessee fan, I only trust the people that live in Knoxville and are there all the time. I don't trust the national people that come in once in a while and try to cover my squad. No. I need you to be going to the restaurants that I go to when I'm in Knoxville. I need you to go to the high schools that I went to. I need you to be on the ground at every press conference. I need you to understand just the aura and the stress that we go through in certain circumstances and the excitement that we have in other circumstances. Like, I need you to understand it. And I think that is something like that a lot of college football fans will say, is they're so protective of their school. And so they need somebody that has that boots on the ground experience. So that's essentially what 24/7 Sports does and is. As for what I do, with it is we produce a lot of what we call VODs, which is video on demand. And we produce a lot of those for all of the team sites and for all of the national sites. And so, for example, today I had 5 different shoots where we took a team site reporter so we look at like matchups that are happening this weekend. So like for LSU and Texas A&M, we had an LSU writer and a Texas A&M writer, and we did like a full breakdown of the game. And then that will live in infamy online. And so that's a lot of what I do with 24/7 Sports, is kind of create these video on demands to help support what's on the website with like the written content.
That's perfect. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, they got me right, because I was a 2-star. And if you were if you were gonna predict my college career, right? It's like, yeah, go to an FCS school and then go work in corporate. So I think that was the route. I think they got me right. I don't know if it was
They say go
really...
professional in something other than sports.
Exactly.
I did it too, though. We all did it. So
exactly. So yeah, they've got a great thing going on, and they do a very, very good job over there at 24/7 Sports. Before we get to Maggie with the last question, I do want to flip it back to the WNBA very briefly. But we were talking about it earlier, this final series. I'm sure you were watching some of it, if not all. From a fan perspective, just what was it like to get to watch this series? It was so back and forth. I feel like every game I was stressed, and every single game went to the final play in some way.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you, having the background of having this season behind you and getting to experience all of these stories and talk to people, just getting to see it culminate in this special just finals event that was so spectacular for the WNBA? Couldn't write it better at Disney. Like,
yeah, well, okay, let's be honest. If Caitlin Clark was in it, maybe
maybe that, yeah.
ESPN would like that better. But if you couldn't get that, no, you definitely got the best teams for sure. I think that was obvious. But the most obvious thing watching was like, this needs to be a 7-game series. So thank goodness we're changing that next year. Because when you have 2 of the games going to overtime, I just think about it as, well, we needed 2 more games then, right? So I'm glad that they're adjusting that. But I was actually very lucky I got to cover the Lynx this year. And so that was one of those teams where just like people were not talking enough about them during the year, because outside of Napheesa Collier, like they didn't have a ton of superstars, right? They were just a great team, and obviously so well coached, because you had Cheryl Reeve, who was the coach of the national team and won a gold medal. And so you knew that this was just like a really, really good team in general, where New York, they obviously very good team, but they had all the stars. They had all the players that you had heard of. And so I love the series from that standpoint, as it felt like this, not that the Lynx were an underdog by any means, but just constantly slept on, because I feel like the conversation was all about the Liberty and then all about Vegas. And then, of course, with the rookies coming in and all the shine that was on them, and the Lynx just kind of quietly were dominating teams. And so I was really excited to see them get to that point, because I think there were just so many underrated stars like Alana Smith and Courtney Williams, and like just so many really, really good players that, like, I'm not going to call them depth players because they're starters, but like depth when it comes to like looking at the WNBA as a whole. They're not the ones that are, making headlines and the ones that are all over the bulletin boards and posters and everything and selling the league. Like, they're just a damn good team and very well coached. And that was clearly obvious. But then Fee too, like one of the best players that I saw in person this year. I say that having covered the Aces as well, seeing Angel Reese up close and personal, seeing Enrique Ngumbawale, who is unreal, seeing the whole Connecticut Sun, which, like, again, we talk about Alyssa Thomas, like, she's fantastic, but they have so many great superstars on that team. And honestly, like, Fee was just one of those people where I was like, you just can't stop her. Like, you just have to cheer her on and be like, you deserve that bucket. Like, I'm not going to defend you. You're just going to go and you do your thing, and I'm just going to stay out of the way. Like, she's just one of those players. And so it was very satisfying from my standpoint, because I like to think that I know what's going to happen. I'm like, no, I promise. Like, the Lynx are very good. I mean, they played Washington, which is one of the worst teams in the league. So obviously they're going to look awesome, but I was like, no, this team's different. Like, I promise they're really good. They're not just playing a bad team. They're fantastic. And so to see them get to the final, it felt very validating. And then, of course, for them to push it to overtime in Game 5, I think that, says all that I need to say.
Yeah, Napheesa, I was watching the final game with my uncle, and he was like, is there anybody in the WNBA that can hit that move where you turn around, you put your knee up, and you fade away. And I was like, yeah, I mean, she just did it like 3 times.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, just watch. She'll probably do it again, and nobody can guard that. She's
No,
incredible.
and she is like made in a lab too for basketball. Like has so much length, but she has so much speed. You know, sometimes when you see these just like really, really tall people, which is the most people in the WNBA, they don't have great like body control, right? They have a little bit of the, you know, giraffes on ice skates sort of situation. And it's not clean and it's not smooth. She's just so smooth, but at her height, it's just so impressive. And everything that she does, like whether it's shooting from the outside or driving the basket, or like you said, like pulling up, like it just everything seems, she makes it look so easy. She's one of those people that I watch and like, I can play basketball. No, I cannot play basketball. I was a soccer player. I do not do the hand-eye coordination sports. This does not work for me. But she just makes it look so smooth and so easy. But then watching it up close and personal, she's like one of the most physical players. I mean, that because you have to be physical if you want to survive in the WNBA. Like if you are not, you're gonna get literally punched out of this league because it hurts. And so, but the way that she does it, it doesn't seem like, you know, those like workhorses that are just go, 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 go. And you're like, wow, that person's working so hard. You can just tell. She doesn't even look like she's working that hard because everything is just so simple and so smooth to her. And so that's why it was just so mesmerizing getting to watch her. And so to see her play in the finals and everybody just kind of be like, yeah, that's what she does. Like I wasn't surprised by any of it. I was like, that's Fee, right? That's what she does.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Yeah.
I feel like that series and kind of like to tie it all together, women's sports in general, people have kind of been coming to the realization of, oh wait, these are really good athletes. I don't know why we were oblivious to this. It's not like this is something new. They've been really good athletes, but it's both disheartening and heartening to see people realize how good female athletes are in the professional sphere.
No, I'll say like an example of that. So first off, when I went to my first WNBA game, I felt like I was watching tennis, honestly. Like my face like was going back and forth. I was like, oh my gosh, they were going so fast. It was insane. My neck was hurting. And then the physicality too. I mean, it was like a WWE like mixed with basketball. It was insane because most of the basketball that I have watched up close has been like men's college basketball, which does have physicality to it too. It's not like, you know, regular season NBA by any means, but the difference was jarring because I was not expecting that because it doesn't translate as much on TV, like unless you see kind of an up close replay or something and you really see that physicality, but like hearing it, I mean, hearing the smacks, like it was crazy. But when it comes to like being legitimate professional athletes and being damn good at what they do, like a great example was when I did the Aces game, Kelsey Plum they were kind of giving her some crap for this, but she travels with a sauna, like a travel sauna, because the thing is like, some people look at the WNBA players as like, oh, this is like an after school thing that they're doing and they all have regular jobs. Like, no, they are professional athletes. They take this incredibly seriously, but they're not as coddled sometimes as other professional athletes and that they have access to all of these things. Again, we were so excited when they got planes, but they also, something that's like that they've been talking a lot about this season too, and hopefully trying to adjust it, is some of these like scheduling things. Like one of the games that we covered with the Lynx and the Mystics, they played a game on Friday night in Minnesota, and then they played each other again on Saturday in Washington. We're like, why are we doing that? If you're gonna play a doubleheader, like do it in one place, like all of this travel. And so to say that about Kelsey Plum, like bringing the sauna along, is because she's like, I'm obviously a professional athlete and I take my body and my recovery very seriously, but the recovery is so much harder sometimes for them too, because the schedule gets really condensed, especially this year when it comes to like the Olympics. They're also having to deal with venue changes all the time because they don't get first go when if there's a hockey game or if there's another, you know, something else that's happening in the arena. And so they're constantly having to adjust to, you know, the rest of the world, realizing that, no, we're very important. We're legit. We get millions of viewers. Like, so through that transition, you kind of got to see like a little bit of the bumpiness in that too, where they're like, these are legitimate professional athletes that have to work harder than other professional athletes because things aren't necessarily as easy for them. And I would not, as a regular person, I would not say that being a professional athlete is easy by any means, But there are certain things that other leagues have also had to go through that have a much deeper history and probably went through these similar things, but the W is just much newer than some of these other leagues. It's been around for a long time, but like not as long as the NBA and the NFL, that they had to figure these things out. Like they had to figure out what was the best, scheduling and how to make it work with having these planes and what they needed to travel with in terms of recovery and that sort of thing. So they're still kind of figuring that out. But all that to say, like they're just forever impressed by how tough they are, given like some of the difficult things and circumstances that they have to go through that we don't see other professional athletes have to endure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's been the theme that you're seeing, and it's even interesting comparing it now too. And obviously, you know, I think as a human, you want to compare things, and watching Netflix's starting five of the NBA. I mean,
Yeah.
they have access to so much, and rightfully so. I mean, it's an amazing product, and they do a great job. And I think
We're
everybody
starting to see a
agrees.
little bit of that change in the WNBA too. I think Phoenix just opened up a huge facility. I know Chicago is committed to doing that as well. Like, where were we? Was it? Oh, Washington. They had very nice facilities and it had been all kind of brand new. And so you're seeing that again. We're in the middle of the growth. And so not everything's 100% fixed right now, but you are seeing it and it's really cool.
Yeah, no, I think too, the WNBA's commissioner, when they're talking about expansion, because they're expanding to more teams now, one of the pieces of criteria when cities are bidding, and I'm over here like, yeah, I'm gonna bid for a team too. I'd like to bring a team to Austin. That'd be great. But one of the pieces of criteria is literally you need to prove that you can have state-of-the-art facilities for these female athletes. And that's part of it now. And you're seeing that not only in the WNBA, but in the NWSL and other sports that are popping up right now in the US and abroad too. So it's really special. And I think to round it out, we just want to thank you for joining us and talking through your incredible experiences. It is so cool when you get to talk to people who are in the thick of it and who get to actually be on the ground with these people and do such a good job of taking care of these athletes and giving us the opportunity to hear about, a little bit more. That's all it is now, is access, and everybody wants that. So this was so much fun and really special. But I have to ask, looking towards next season with the WNBA, since that's what we've been on, way too early prediction. Who do you think is going to be in the WNBA Finals? Is Caitlin going to make it? What are your thoughts?
I think just making it to the next round, honestly, would be a really big, honestly. Like the fact that they made it to the playoffs this year, I think is kind of insane as well, just given where the Fever were before this. So that's already fantastic. My way too early, like, honestly, Vegas was one of those teams that I was surprised didn't make it in that instance where, a lot of people were surprised that the Lynx made it that far and I was not because I'm a genius. But with Vegas, I'm like, they have so much talent. They have so much experience. I mean, the Olympic team was like sponsored by the Aces. They couldn't do anything during the break because half their team was gone. So they're one of those teams that, and obviously they're incredibly well coached. Like Becky Hammon was also a fantastic person to cover. She's just so honest and really like focused on teaching, and not just like teaching her players, but teaching us and making sure that we, fully understood what they were going through, like honestly and not sugar-coated. And so I do think that they just had some issues. I know they were missing their point guard earlier in the season. And so, when Chelsea Gray eventually came back, like that, it got better, but it didn't fully get fixed. And they were already kind of in a hole at that point. So I think that which is a big if everybody can stay healthy and you're able to get most of that core of the team back, I do think that the Aces could make some noise in the postseason next year.
I mean, she called it. She's a genius, so it's probably,
we heard it here first. Yeah, we're gonna come back here in a year and be like, Emily knew.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. That's a crazy thing about the WNBA too. It's because it's so small that like just everybody's got a chance. Everybody's so good, and the margin of victory is just so thin. So it's a fool's errand trying to predict what we think is going to happen. But that's what makes sports coverage fun, is when you're right. Which if I am, I will be back here a year later and you guys will give me my flowers. If I'm not though, then this never happened. We're good.
No one needs to know.
Exactly.
we'll go in the abyss.
Yes.
No, but again, thank you so much. Maggie, I'll let you round us out.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. Also, the listeners don't know, but I interviewed you about 2 years ago for my college thesis project, and now I am working in sports at the NFL. And this feels really full circle for me just to sit down with you and like catch up with you because you've had so much growth over 2 years. And obviously, I'm at a different stage in life, but it's awesome to come and like chat with you and see all the amazing things that you're doing.
No, I agree. I won't call you out, but I did meet you when you were in high school. And so you talk about like, coming
I
through
forgot that. Oh my
full
God.
circle. Well, yes, because I did I did go over to your house for dinner once. So yes, no, like you starting just wanting to do this and you weren't sure if you wanted to continue to play soccer in college. And I remember like your mom was asking me for advice on like how you get recruited and all of these things, and just seeing what you did at Penn and all the great interviews that you did and everything. Like it was just really cool to see it come full circle here too. And just both of you guys. I mean, I'm sure this wasn't just like a random, oh, this is a cool job, I guess I'll take it. Like you both are so passionate about this. So just like we were talking about before we came on, like we are so lucky that we get to do this and we get to call this a job. And so there are long days, there are working holidays, there are working weekends, but man, I don't know about you guys, but it's beyond worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And thank you for having me on.
Oh, this is awesome. We really appreciate you and your time. So thank you.